When we were planning for what we wanted to do at Highways UK this year, we looked at what we could do most effectively to bring that industry together, to consider its challenges, and to work together to meet and respond to them. And so we decided we wanted to do something a bit fun. So the aim is we're going to do some very rapid-fire presentations from a range of excellent speakers from across the industry. At the end of that, we'll be asking you to vote on what you would like to see in terms of the change that happens in the industry. So, in order to do so, I've got one task that I'll ask you as the audience to do, which is to use the Slido voting system. You can either use that if you've got the app already on your phone, which I think details were circulated ahead of the conference, but if you don't, please do use the website at www.sli.do. The event code is #HWISUK-CECA. So that'll come up at the end, and we'll give you the opportunity to vote, but we're on quite a tight schedule, so I have only one final thing to ask. Part of the event today is supported by the CITB as part of the work that they do to develop the industry. There are some surveys that are on the seats. If you get the chance, please do take the time to fill those out and drop them back at our stand across the way. We're just here. And that'll help us to ensure that the training that we provide continues to meet the needs of industry. So, with no further ado, with a rapid schedule, I'm going to pass you across to our first speaker, which is Mark Ollerton. Mark.
Right, good morning, or just about still morning, isn't it? Mark Ollerton, I'm the Commercial Delivery Director for Major Projects. I'm a civils engineer, spent 30 years on the dark side of commercial, but I spent the majority of that, other than the last 6 years, on the supply chain side. So definitely a poacher turned gamekeeper, and I've got the scars to prove it, actually. The problem. Just a very quick overview, really, that this is something that the ICE and Project 13, no secrets, it's been out there for quite a while, but ICE actually looks at the problems that we have in infrastructure, and it states that the infrastructure model is currently broken. And this is both on the contractor side, it's on the supply side, and I will also say that's on the client side as well, so it's not just the contractor. As you can see up there, this is working too quickly. I'll go back. Too often projects are delivered over budget, past deadline and below par. This is what the ICE 13 Project 13 is actually telling us. So the problem. What I'm thinking is that the challenge that I really want to set CECA is what can we do as a sector that is actually going to bring cost certainty to delivery. I'm going to badge that around design to budget. But it's something that seems relatively simple, but what is it that's stopping us from doing it? This Global Construction Review highlights some of the last century's problem construction projects. There's some pretty shocking figures in there, but it is showing that there's a trend in major infrastructure that we are overspending and not delivering to time. These particular schemes, I'm not pointing the finger at anything, but I'm sure all of us, or majority of us in this room, will have experienced some of those issues. It seems to be we're getting a bad name in infrastructure. But what can we do to actually make things better? Competitive bidding, that is always a bit of a hiatus. You get a lowest price, and then we spend the next 5 years trying to work up a price. I've worked with ICE Fifth, and that was a wonderful way of great, I would say, the opposite of collaboration, but it was a very, very contentious environment. NEC has driven us to a better outcome. But can anybody tell me, it's beating me here, so I'm going to go back. In terms of infrastructure, can anybody name a £1 billion scheme that's currently being delivered on time and to budget? Shout out. Nobody from Highways England, please. I'll give you a clue. It is the A14. 18 months to go, it's still on time to budget. But this last 18 months is probably where we see a large amount of cost increase coming into schemes. We have this time and time again. But so far, the A14 has managed to overcome flora and fauna with voles and great crested newts. I would say it's probably one of the largest archaeology, I can't even say it, largest digs outside of Egypt in terms of archaeology. We found Saxon henges, we have found woolly mammoths or woolly rhinos. All of these things are kind of unexpected, but we have absorbed some of that cost within the current scheme budget of 1.453 billion, and that has not changed. One of the things of the features of the A14 is we set that budget at the very start of construction. We didn't competitively bid it, we set that budget. It took 3 years probably to get that budget agreed. 4-minute warning, thank you. Now, what was preventing us from getting that agreement? What is it that stops us from designing to a budget? Highways England, we have got a finite set of budgets set against schemes. So what's preventing the designer, the contractor, from actually delivering on time and giving us a budget, a construction budget that we can afford? So, one of the ways that I think that we could actually solve that is through a better understanding and cost transparency of cost metrics within the construction, and in particular the highways industry. We've all got data. I've got cost data that built up that 1.453 billion scheme. And actually it's the same data that contractors charge us. It's the same information. Contractors, they actually understand their cost metrics, but somehow we can't seem to actually relate to each other or actually create that transparency that enables us to design to a particular fixed budget. So, there is a whole bunch of institutes that want to help and understand and share data. RICS, the International Construction Measurement Standards, that's great about looking at the standard of measurement, but understanding the cost data and somewhere to hold that information and share it with the industry. So that's the challenge for CECA. I'm looking for something that is actually going to collate a transparent set of figures across the industry. Thank you. I overran. That's really hard in 5 minutes.
Thanks. Can I introduce our next speaker, which is Mark Temple of Gattaca.
I think I've made good morning, so good morning, everybody. I'm Mark Temple. I'm Managing Director of Gattaca Associates Limited. We are a utility infrastructure consultancy formed in 2004. I was a civil engineer by trade and unfortunately went into specialising in utility infrastructure for my sins. I'm behind on it, sorry, my apologies. So the organisation itself, we are an organisation who provide a complete and comprehensive end-to-end service. So we don't deal with structures, we don't deal with highways, we deal with utilities, gas, water, electric, communications, and basically wherever they become part of a project's infrastructure, we'll manage that with the statutory undertakers in order to give a delivery on a project that is required. So what is the problem that we're looking at this morning? We're looking at managing statutory undertaker risk. What's the perception? So the perception is that the utility companies pose the number one risk for most projects, with the statutory undertakers perceived as difficult to deal with. They're always over budget and they always blow the programme. Is that fair? Is it unfair? What are the risks that they actually present to a project? Let's think about this really seriously, because first and foremost, it's safety. They are dangerous pieces of kit that we come across when we start dealing with the utility infrastructure. They have complex design issues. Okay, so their design has always got to interface with the emerging designs of your highways, your structures, your roads. They can't just turn on and off networks these days. Never could. Basically, their customer supply and their outage constraints are huge. That is what they are governed by. And consequently, network analysis and studies are crucial to the works that can be undertaken on these networks. They have long lead times on materials. Very few of the materials are manufactured in the UK any longer. And they have long lead times on specialist contractors. So the bigger the kit, the more specialist the contractors are that can actually deal with these utilities. They have land issues, entry issues, way leaves, easements. And more importantly than anything else, everything is under a legal requirement. So the problem itself that they face themselves. Yes, we know what we face when we're actually looking at a project, be that a regeneration project, be that a highway project. They are also highly regulated industries. They have to comply with New Roads and Street Works Act, with NJUG, DEFRA. They are regulated by the DTI, and more importantly than anything else is the HUC. They have complex networks. If I put up some of the maps we have in our office of the networks that these utility companies own, they are just unbelievable. And they are multi-layered. So many of the utility companies these days can be national, they can be regional, they can be multi-regional. You now have incumbent networks and you have independent networks. A deregulation of the industry brought in a lot of competition, which brought in the independent networks. We're looking at gas, water, electric and telecoms. Are we? No. There's a lot more than that. There's oil, you've got oxygen lines these days, you've got cement slurry lines. There are a lot of networks out there that we have to deal with. The sheer number of schemes these days that these guys have applications sent to them is enormous. The take-up is about 7% at the moment of what they are actually having applications made for. Multiple scheme applications. And then whilst the scheme is going on, there's all the iterations and the design changes that come about while they're trying to deal with the networks. And there's very poor communication across all stakeholders. How do we reduce the risk? Early engagement, guys. We should always early engage with them. We need empathy with them. We need to understand each other's drivers. Okay? They've got budget to work to. They have competition to manage. They've got regulations to manage. Environmental issues. They have costs. They have budgets to run to. Markets. There's open markets these days, and they've got economics they've got to deal with. More importantly, those are their governance. They have to follow their governance. We need to collaborate. We need to build relationships. It's all about communication. What's the proposal? Having worked with Highways England, having worked with a lot of the major consultants, a lot of the major contractors, there has to be a forum whereby senior management level talk to each other within the utility companies and within the organisations. And we need to set up working groups to devise strategies for single points of contact. We have to stop a scattergun approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Martin Perks, Commercial Programme Director for Highways England. Martin.
Thank you. As just introduced, my name is Martin Perks. I'm a recovering QS. I'm a commercial lead on the Regional Investment Programme, so very busy after this morning's announcement. My challenge is around when will the construction industry stop talking about it and take ownership of productivity improvements? A bit of a challenge. So really where I'm looking is agriculture over the last 40 years has had an improvement in its productivity of 1,500% through food demand by customers and retailers. Manufacturing's had an improvement in productivity of 760% over the same period of time, driven by people like Toyota. Retail, on-demand retailing has had a 700% productivity improvement. When was the last time you ordered something and it didn't arrive the next day? We, in the same period, have had an improvement in productivity of 6%. 6%. We've got to do something about it. Here's some of the words that I think and phrases that I think contribute to our inability to improve productivity. I think there's a really small anecdote I've got, which when the M1 was built in 1959, they managed to do a mile a month. Currently we do a mile in 3 to 6 months. And these are some of the reasons that doesn't happen. I think we've all got to examine ourselves to see whether these things are done to us or by us. So safety's involved in all of this stuff. There is potential. Some mega projects, we're all involved in mega projects for Highways England. There's 20 to 40% capacity for productivity improvement. We've looked at, McKinsey's did a study for us, and we've looked at some of our schemes. And within the bounds of the scheme, within the budget, within the timescale, some of them have got 60% productivity improvement opportunities. There's a huge amount of work to do to achieve that. And one of the things that I think we should be looking at is, what does productivity actually mean? So it's safely, predictably delivering more value for less money. And if you look through that stuff, the bottom piece there about looking at value, it's the most important part. Value is working together as all of the constituent parts. It's the client, designer, the constructor, the supplier and manufacturers all working to success. And we really need to redefine what success is as exceeding the investor's expectations. That's what better value and higher levels of productivity amount to. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Can I now introduce Dominic Proud, Chair of the LG Tag National Transport Group?
Good afternoon. So I'm Dominic Proud. I'm the Chair of the Transport Committee for Local Government Technical Advisors Group. I'm also the Service Delivery Manager for Highways Transport and Engineering at Telford and Wrekin Council. So the challenge is quite a big one. It's funding the whole UK roads network. Obviously everyone's aware of the £8 billion backlog according to the Alarm Survey. Local authorities are responsible for 97% of the network, with obviously Highways England are responsible for the other 3%. In terms of obviously funding, we need to look at closing that gap between the two. The recent announcement on the £450 million pothole announcement was welcome, but really it equates to about 1,750 per mile, which clearly you're not going to surface dress a mile of road for that. Obviously, the RIS process has been a massive benefit to Highways England. Network Rail work on a similar process, and even the NHS works on a 10-year funding plan. And that just allows better planning, better sort of engagement with the supply chain, and brings further efficiencies in terms of trying to reduce that backlog. And obviously, as an industry, HMEP has pushed the industry forward in terms of asset management, incentive funding, the banding assessments. So there's been a lot of benefits and advancement as part of that, but we still think that there's room for further improvement as part of that. So in terms of the, I suppose, the solution as we see it, TAG has got 5 key priorities, and we feel that we could reduce that backlog over the course of one parliamentary term. So in terms of priority 1, better understanding the pothole backlog. Obviously we've got that £8 billion figure, but really I think if you consider the amount of funding that local authorities spend, it amounts to about £1.5 billion a year. So over a 5-year term, along with the funding that the National Infrastructure Commission identified recently, about £0.5 billion a year. They were looking at from 2025, but we feel that we need that funding sooner. Obviously, by 2025, there'll be further deterioration of the network. And if you start to look at that funding, you start to be able to close that £8 billion gap. And really, we need to look at a multi-year settlement. So DfT have been successful previously and need to be applauded, actually, in terms of providing multi-year settlement to local authorities. That's given us clarity over a 5-year period. It's allowed us to plan better. It's allowed us to develop those asset management programs. However, we're now coming to the end of that multi-year settlement. The comprehensive spending review next year, we're hoping that we'll get a further 5 years as part of that to give us greater clarity. But we want to push further than that. We want to look at a 10-year plan. Obviously, nothing is certain, but we want to see that further foresight in terms of planning and investment on the network. You know, it works well for Highways England, it works well for Network Rail, and the NHS have also got that 10-year plan. So we feel understanding and trying to close that backlog in terms of a small amount of additional investment, along with the multi-year settlement, will allow us to think smarter in terms of the funding that we deliver. Priority 3, we've got TOTEX, the common sense to investment there. We feel that this disparity between CapEx and revenue expenditure causes problems and is inconsistent across a lot of local authorities. So we want to see a smarter move towards total expenditure, and this is to avoid the pitfalls in terms of spray injection patching or large patching, is that capital or revenue? And actually, really, it should just be about the best treatment for the network and how we deliver that and remove those barriers in terms of capital and revenue funding. And we want to keep it simple, one single funding stream for local authorities. If you look at from 2010, the amount of funding hasn't massively changed across local authorities, but we've had LSTF, Highways Challenge funding, pothole funding, and actually we just want to see one single funding stream. And then really it's about understanding and using data better to understand the backlog. All authorities and highway alliances seem to do things differently, and we'd like to see a year zero in terms of getting that baseline data for the whole of the country to understand what that actual backlog looks like. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. Can I introduce Stephen Tompkins?
Thanks very much. I haven't got any slides. I was just going to talk because it's only for 5 minutes. I think it's fair to say we got the invite from the Civil Engineering Contractors Association, and being as it is a contractors association, I was a little surprised that there's only 2 contractors, giving views on how they change the industry. I think if you go to the dinner tonight after a few beers, there'll be plenty of contractors there giving plenty of opinions of how they'd like to change the industry. What I'd like to talk about is quality and raising the bar on quality. We have a lot of really good initiatives in this industry, and we have a lot of ideas of how we change it, but we really need to raise the bar on quality, because when you look at it on the outset, if you bought a car from BMW or Mercedes or Toyota or whoever, and they said to you, listen, come back in 12 months, let us know if there's anything wrong with it, and we'll tighten the bolts and we'll fix the brakes, see how we go. You just wouldn't accept that as being the reality. And the reality is we deliver projects that we know are imperfect and say that we're going to come back in 12 months or 2 years and fix those things. And we've got to get into a space where we're providing the sort of best quality that we can from the very first, for the day one of handover. And I think why that's important as well, it has got a lean in towards safety. And when it sort of the light bulb came on for me was we were reviewing a safety issue, an incident that had happened about a year ago. And the incident in question, what had happened was a guy was masticing a little sort of cowl on the outside of a building about 8 foot high off a ladder. And everyone in the room was aghast that this guy had actually climbed up on a ladder to mastic around a cowl, until someone said, well, why did we leave it? Why was it left until all the scaffolding had come down and it was dropped and someone had spotted it? Why wasn't it checked and masticed at that 11th hour before, when you could have worked safely? And then no one's walking around and jumping on ladders to sort of go and fix something. And this happens every day. People are exposed to danger because things aren't finished off. People are exposed to, and jobs are handed over that aren't perfect quality, when we should really box that off and make sure that that's a reality in our industry, and not wait 12 months and sort it out if someone spots it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Stephen. I'd like to now introduce me, because we thought, well, if everyone else is having their say, shouldn't we have our say as well? So I'd like to talk to you this morning about a more diverse highway sector. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Halloween was last week, but I'm just about to show you a horror story. That graph basically shows the demographic makeup of our industry. Now, we're talking about construction, not purely highways here at the moment. But you look at it, the yellow is where we used to be back in 1991. The blue is where we are. This stuff over here is our EU migrant workforce. The vast majority of the younger people in the industry are now coming from the EU, and that's going to give us a bit, sorry, not the vast majority, but a large number of people in our industry are coming from the EU. And that's all fine, because there's nothing going to change about that in the next few months. So what do we need to worry about? But if you think there might be some change, maybe this is an issue that we need to address. This last week, we put out a CECA, our workload trends, something that we've been doing for 20 years. At that, in England, it is now harder to recruit skilled resource to deliver construction projects than it has been at any time in our organisation's existence. But we're not helping ourselves. Our next slide. So that's what the percentage of the UK workforce looks like in terms of those who are women. That's what it looks like when you talk about the construction workforce. That's what it looks like when you're talking about the percentage of that workforce that are actually working on site. 1%. We need to do better. And it's not just about gender. Black, Asian minority ethnic, that's the UK workforce. Again, that's us as construction. There's pools of talent that we're not taking advantage of, that we could be taking advantage of, and we're not doing enough to do so. If I had more time, I could show you more and more graphs, and you know what they all say. None of them are painting a rosy picture. But I only have a limited time, so I'll come to the solution. I think what I'd like to ask you to give support for is that we work together over the next year, that we support the existing best practice. Highways England is doing some fantastic work in this area, and we should be supporting that. But we should be rolling that support out to the wider sector, and we should also be working with our clients across the rest of the industry. So instead of chasing 10 different targets around EDI, we've got a common set of targets that drives real change. And as part of that, I think it's time to get out there and sell this brilliant industry. You've all come and you've joined to join our industry, and I believe that you're having great careers, I hope, in doing so. We need to be bringing in the next generation to do so. So thank you very much for your time this morning. I'd now like to introduce Les Ellaby, Director of PowerChamp.
Good morning. PowerChamp, can't see my speech. Okay, start again. PowerChamp Technologies are the UK distributors for RoadSem, which is manufactured at Moerdijk in the Netherlands. RoadSem is a cement additive designed to improve the performance of cement for stabilization in road construction. RoadSem soil concrete has a high modulus of elasticity and a resistance to cracking. RoadSem soil concrete is thermally inert, impermeable and frost resistant, and it spreads the imposed and repetitive loadings, reducing impact on subsoils. In road construction in particular, it's very important to eliminate the 3 R's: rutting, reflective cracking, and roller coastering. Current UK road design relies on imported granular materials. This is a problem from a sustainability and an efficiency point of view, due to depletion in irreplaceable natural resources and the trucking distances from quarries to sites. A more rational road construction approach is needed to reduce the dependence on imported materials, whilst improving the quality and the durability of the roads. Many chemical substances have been used to stabilize base soils for road construction. For example, lime, OPC, PFA, and GGBS. Lime and OPC are the 2 most common additives which have been employed to reduce importing granular materials for road construction. The jury's still out, but cracking and failure to cope with long-term soil-borne acids and sulfates will always limit the use of traditional soil stabilization. RoadSem is proven to prevent cracking even in high-strength soil mixes, and the dense, void-free properties of RoadSem soil concrete reduce the risk of any acid or sulfate attack. In the UK, we have large quantities of waste, and as the treatment of this waste changes to energy production by incineration, we're going to get large quantities of bottom ash generated. The possibility to use this new waste stream as a replacement for imported virgin materials in road construction must now be recognized as a real opportunity. Our RoadSem product, with its cage-like zeolite structure, can capture and contain all potential pollutants to allow a cheaper, more environmentally friendly source of material for road construction. The high elastic modulus of RoadSem-bound materials results in a reduction in the required thickness of the pavement structures, consequently reducing costs and providing a solution to the critical problem of our declining base of granular materials. Although RoadSem is expensive to manufacture, it is actually used in very small quantities, together with OPC or other pozzolanic materials. This produces major improvements in the soil properties, making it economical to use. Extensive laboratory studies have been carried out testing all types of soils and waste streams to develop strong, durable, crack-free, road-based designs. Testing with different mix percentages to achieve an engineered base that is suitable for the asphalt running surface to be effectively bound to. The concept of constructing a road entirely from the existing soil with just a thin asphalt running surface is not just a university theory, nor laboratory trial. We've constructed over 2,000 miles of highways around the world, with some of these road-sem roads now successfully reaching 20 years of age. We think we've proven the concept. With potholes costing motorists over £1 billion a year in damage to their cars, the future must be for a bound road base that is totally impermeable to water. It's faster to construct, far more sustainable, less inclined to rut or pothole, giving a longer maintenance-free life. One last thought. We now seriously need to consider the environmental cost of trucking road-based materials around the UK. With RoadStem, 100% of road-based material can usually be found on site. Thank you.
So, thank you, Les. And now introduce Sean Pidcock. Sean.
So, hi everybody, I'm Sean Pidcock, Programme Director for Smart Motorways at Highways England. So I'm going to cover a favourite topic of mine, adaptation of modular construction, which is going to cover a bit of productivity alongside and a bit like some of the discussions we've had before. So what's the problem? Why is there a problem? Well, the answer is clear. It's the same old that we keep doing. It's bespoke design, it's complexity, it's time wasteful. It's making sure that we aren't productive. Design as a percentage of my programmes still the same as it was when I started in my career 30 odd years ago. It introduces risk, brings it to site. We're on site too long, which is impacting our customers overall. We ask for investment in the infrastructure sector, and actually we're dragging down the whole of the UK in terms of productivity because of the size of our sector. When you look at that and you look at agriculture, and you could take that back nearly 100 years, agriculture has improved productivity, almost doubled it at the same time as we've stood still. So we're talking about farming industries, which is probably slightly more dysfunctional in many ways than us, and yet we've done nothing about it. So we have to look at ourselves about how we're going to make changes going forward. So what are the barriers? Touched on them a little bit. Barriers, I think, from my perspective, are culture and arrogance. We aren't learning from everybody else. We aren't learning from manufacturing. So our business models, we've got to be more agile and look to move. Engineers are still designing things rather than engineering and adding value. There's a lack of collaboration, despite all the talk of collaboration in the industry. We end up back at commercial discussions. Most of our projects are run by commercial and contractual management rather than project management. And I'm not sure we actually know how to change. I also touched on diversity. It's a lack of knowledge and a lack of diversity in terms of what we're bringing to our projects overall in the wider supply chain, including the client. So what's the solutions? Well, the government's initiatives are already in place with regard to a presumption. You've got the government sector deal with a presumption of off-site manufacture. We've got procurement. You look at Highways England. We really want to move into this space where we look at our new procurement models such as RDP, you look at the SMP Alliance, SQ's coming out in a couple of weeks, by the way. These are set up to unlock the commercial incentives, but we need the supply chain and we need everybody in this room to come along with us. So I ask you to, when you need to make this change, it's the biggest change we can make in terms of our sector. Please come along with us, improve safety, production and the productivity of the country as a whole. That's it for me. And I finished early.
Thanks, Sean. And that brings us on to our second to last presenter, which is Colin Law of Sidewinder. Colin.
Good day. unaccustomed to this position as I am. Sidewinder UK. There we go. Sidewinder UK. We are the offset paving specialists in the UK, working on all levels of highway schemes, from SMPs to motorways, ordinary motorway schemes, dual carriageways, new builds, unclassified roads that take us out into the countryside where it's nice and fresh and clean. Despite the paver reference, we place and grade all asphalt, stone and topsoils, and our works include road widening and haunch reconstruction, central reserve works, footpaths, cycleways, asphalt V-channels and swale. Our method of working has been recognised as being lean, green, safe, more productive and efficient than more traditional options. In fact, it has also been noted by others that in many ways we're ticking the boxes of the initiative Construction 2025 and have effectively been doing so since we started in 1989 as an inherent part of the way that we work. The image that you can see up there is from a scheme where our approach and attitude to delivery resulted in a 250% increase in productivity over the original planned method, and there are other examples. One's Central Reserve Motorway scheme, their case study showed a 42% improvement on the original programme. So what's the problem? From our perspective, it is often said that SMEs are a valuable and integral part of the supply chain, and yet despite this, for us and others like us, the problem is making our voices heard at the top end of the supply chain. Through conversations and comments on postings on social media, the problem primarily lies in the difficulties we have engaging with principal contractors and some of the key subcontractors early enough in the development of schemes to maximise the benefits of our abilities, our experience and our attitudes. As smaller organisations, we tend to be tight-knit teams, committed and dedicated to providing the best possible service. Our own experience is one of frustration, and just like finding Wally, it takes considerable effort to make any kind of headway within top-tier contractors, because when we try to find someone to talk to about up-and-coming schemes, no one knows where we need to be directed. Even if we have a name for a third party, we end up talking to a voicemail that never responds. And we know from inquiries we receive from major subcontractors tendering the principals that there are further applications of the services we offer. I know that even some of those subcontractors who have considerably more influence and greater resources than we are also met with sometimes negative and dismissive attitudes. With this, even within this very event, I've stood here and talked to people, meaningful conversations, apparently with genuine interest. You go along and exchange names, numbers, and then after that, nothing. It doesn't develop. So, the solution, possible solution, make pre-qualification for smaller companies more flexible, or have people that are more understanding of some of the more unique SMEs that don't necessarily fit inside the pigeonholes of your systems. Help organise lunchtime seminars where presentations can be made. Some sites will make this happen, but you need to have the right person that's prepared to go and make it available. Improve lines of communication and listen to what we have to say with an open mind. Don't make assumptions or be dismissive. We know better than anyone how effective we can be given the opportunity. And just because we don't carry a big brand name doesn't mean we don't have something to offer. Not all the benefits are obvious or easy to express unless we are given a platform on which to stand. One specific and recent example stands out. We've specialised doing what we do for 30 years. And in particular, we've been at the forefront of the production of asphalt V-channel as an alternative surface water channel. And we're responsible for installing miles of it on motorways and trunk roads across the country. Yet, despite the amount of data available, it is not included in highway spec. And because of that, the principal contractors have to put forward their case and apply for a departure, which is often too late in the contract for someone to actually, by the time someone listens. So how can we as an SME hope to go along and bring alternatives to the attention and hope to, if you don't open the lines of communication? That lack of communication became apparent when a presentation to an audience of one on a major project, from the information that was available, we were able to show an alternative where the cost savings alone would have been in excess of 60%. So why don't you become more accessible? Why don't you listen to us? Why don't you listen to what we have to offer? Engage and collaborate with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. And our final speaker is Megan Downing. Megan.
Thank you for that. So I'm the Customer Service Director at Highways England for our Major Projects Department. Highways England have 3 imperatives that we work to, safety being the number 1, of course, and then customer service and delivering our investment. Being the Major Projects Customer Service Director, I worry quite a lot about roadworks. So they're the thing that we do that really impacts what people think about us, the experience we're having. And we heard earlier from Transport Focus that the main thing that worries people is their journey time. There's an interesting fact that people who go through roadworks believe that they're having a lower journey time, even if it's not true. Even if you would have been doing 40 miles an hour anyway, because it's a busy road, if you're doing 40 miles an hour in roadworks, you believe that you're being delayed. So I'm here to talk about a challenge around roadworks, which is an increasing thing as investment goes up, which is fantastic, but we've got to do better at coordinating between ourselves. So the problem, if you're a driver, you start somewhere on an urban or rural section of road. You might encounter quite a lot of roadworks. They'll usually be in disparate areas. You've probably got quite a lot of diversion opportunities. You can get around them in that sort of environment. And it'd generally be a lower speed, and the roadworks could be proportionally a lower speed, and you could hit various of them. You then get onto the strategic road network. You're doing a longer distance, so you're probably seeing fewer things, but they're probably more annoying because you're hitting one after the other. It's a very linear spaced network, and if there are 2 sets of roadworks in 100 miles, that generally feels like too many. And of course, there's not so many diversion opportunities. No journey ever starts or finishes on the strategic road network. You get off the strategic road network back into an urban or rural environment. And again, there's the opportunity that you're seeing a range of roadworks, particularly if you're going into a city at the minute. So if you're travelling anywhere in Birmingham, then God help you. And because the amount of stuff going on, whilst fantastic, is quite frustrating to drive through. So that's a driver's experience of the increasing investment that the country's making. So there are some interesting industry challenges, I think. So there's something about traffic flow. Do we really understand, on a full network perspective, where people are coming from and going to? Where are people likely to come across several different bits of roadworks in what could be a 50-mile, 100-mile journey? There's something about systems and procedures. So do our processes support coordinating how we're doing roadworks, whether it's in close proximity or across long distances? I suggest that if it's across long distances, probably not. There's something about incentivization. What is motivating our industry to coordinate or not? I don't actually know the answer to this. I've been thinking about it. I don't think there is a very strong incentive if you're doing a project down in Southampton to care about what's happening up in Newcastle, whether or not hundreds and thousands of people are making that journey on a regular basis. There's something there about diverse clients. So I'm talking about a whole country picture. So you've got your local highway authorities, you might have metropolitan authorities, you will have the strategic road network, Scotland, Wales, utility companies, etc. And that could affect the diverse infrastructure clients there, could be affecting the coordination opportunities in the industry. And there's something about behaviours as well. What behaviours are people exhibiting in wanting to get this stuff right, in wanting to make sure that if you're a driver, you're having a joined up experience across a long distance? So some of the solutions, I think, and I've kind of picked 3 out of a possible 7. So there's stuff that's already happening around, street managers in the works. There's stuff about better information, telling people what's being closed and when. I think the areas that could be got at are something around traffic modelling. So again, if you are doing a major project in Southampton, do you have any idea where people are going and whether it's going to, whether they need to know about something that's happening on the M6, on the M1, up to Newcastle, up to Scotland? There's something about direct contractor liaison as well. So again, if you're a project director and you're a project contractor, are you talking to other projects around, or are you expecting clients to do that? And what strength could be brought from the industry being part of that? And incentivization. What would really incentivize people caring more about this and wanting to make sure that drivers have the most joined up experience you can possibly have across distances and across boundaries? So that's my challenge. Thank you very much.
Well, that brings us to the end of our presentations. Can I first and foremost say a huge thanks to our presenters? I'll be really honest, this, we talk about innovation in the industry. Well, this was an innovation for us. It was a bit of a step into the unknown as to whether it was going to work as an event. And as I was preparing over at our stand this morning, I suddenly worried. I'd seen the presentation, so much information to impart. I thought we would bust our time and make ourselves unpopular with our subsequent group. Everyone's done brilliantly and hit things on time. But not only that, I look at these proposals and there's not one there that I wouldn't be happy and proud to take forward over the next year. But it's not my choice. We will, as an organisation, provide Secretariat to take forward one of these ideas, but we need to know from you which one it should be. So we would like you to vote using the Slido app or using the Slido website. So now is the time to do so. I'm going to put up the details again on the board for you to have a look at. Please do now take the opportunity to vote because it is going to make the difference. The plan will be next year, we'll come back here and explain what has happened, what we have done to make that change. So the one thing I should say is, isn't technology wonderful? We've had a conversation with the venue and the Wi-Fi over here isn't great. So we're a bit into the unknown as to whether this is going to work or not. So please do keep going. And I will be doing my own vote as well. And then hopefully we're going to be able to bring up the slide. Yeah, let's just have a look at how that is going. So have we? Oh, we're up there. Fantastic. Oh. See, the thing is, with it being live, if you don't like the answer, get voting, and you can change it. So, I'll let things keep going until it gets, looks like we've had all of the responses in. Is anyone still struggling and wants to vote, or can we call it at that point? No, in that case, it looks, Sean, Sean, looks like we're going to have to be doing some work together. Congratulations. So the winner for this year is adoption of modular construction. I want to again, could we thank all of our presenters in the normal fashion? And as I say, we will be hopefully working with Sean over the next year to make this a reality. Thank you all very much for visiting this morning. Enjoy the rest of Highways UK.